Why don't we just order it?
Why 19 requests for a drink? The doctor has ordered that she get 2,000 cc's a day.
Well, look at your sheet. When did she ask for all these drinks?
Well, she almost consistently asks when you come into the room or when you're leaving.
I kind of think maybe she wants to be sure you'll come to her, and then she doesn't want you to leave.
Maybe she's afraid to be alone. She wants to be suctioned then? Does she need it this often?
No, we'd traumatize her trachea if we did it that often.
Well, what do all these requests mean?
Stephanie says she thinks Mrs. Reynolds is afraid of choking to death.
Well, what can we do about all this?
We can check her trach, listen to her chest whenever we see her, and tell her when it's clear.
Maybe she wouldn't be so afraid if we told her when we were coming back. All right, let's try a few of these things before the next meeting and see if they really work.
We're going to check your trach and listen to your chest to make sure you're breathing all right. Your trach is clear. You seem to be breathing fine. Your chest sounds clear. How about a drink of water? I'll be back in 15 minutes. Now you try and get some rest. Say, this is really working. She hasn't been incontinent for 3 days. You remember we thought it was her illness that made her wet the bed? You remember how worried she got about suctioning? She doesn't ask for it half as much now.
How are you, Mrs. Reynolds?
Oh, I'm a lot better, nurse. But you know, she says she'll be back in 15 minutes. And lying here alone, 15 minutes sometimes seems like 15 hours.
I'll be back in 1 minute. See if you can time that.
When the head nurse began to take an interest in the plan, I knew we had passed over a major hurdle, and that things would now go well with this patient and with the staff caring for her.
Now you'll see what they mean.
How does this sound to you?
We now began to develop a 24-hour plan of care and to involve Mrs. Reynolds in it. She made decisions about her diet. We scheduled care around her favorite TV programs. Then we involved him.
That wasn't so bad, was it?
Not at all. I think I can handle that all right.
And if you get into any trouble, just get one of us. We'll be glad to help you.
Thank you.
He was with her most of the day. He would have to suction her when she went home. And he wanted to help. And so he entered the partnership that now involved all of us.
How's that?
It's good. It's always better when you feed me.
Oh, now you're trying to soft-soap me down.
The sun began to shine in this ward, and Mrs. Reynolds improved markedly. They began to look forward to her going home. The staff now looked on them as friends and began to gain the satisfactions they had never before received from caring for this patient. And at our meetings, we discovered that staff time now spent in Mrs. Reynolds' care had dropped from 7 hours and 42 minutes a day to 1 hour and 50 minutes.
You're doing very well, but it must be difficult to talk and to eat.
I don't mind though as long as John can feed me.
Don't cry. What's the matter?
No plan is without its problems and reversals. There came a time when Mrs. Reynolds reverted completely to her old, unhappy, demanding, incontinent state.
Has she told you anything as to why she's unhappy? Do you hurt? Oh, maybe you could fix her pillow and rub her neck or something.
No one could learn from her what had gone wrong. We felt that in some way we couldn't understand. We'd failed her again. The staff had to be helped to understand that there were reasons for Mrs. Reynolds' setback. Okay, let's go back and see when her care started to change. What happened?
Well, I don't know if this is important, but you know Mrs. Jones, who was a roommate for such a long time, well, she was discharged.
And the day she left, remember? We put that poor old lady in Mrs. Jones' bed, and she died. And Mrs. Reynolds coughed out her trach tube, and that new intern had trouble getting her back in.
I guess she was just afraid of dying again.
When we understood, we could help her once again. And once again, all was well with the Reynolds.
How nice.
I thought you'd like some of these flowers.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Reynolds. They're beautiful.
For Christmas number 4. Number 2.
Oh. John, they're lovely. Why don't you put one in your buttonhole?
Hello there. How are you folks today?
Because of what we had learned about Mrs. Reynolds' care, we began to deal more effectively with the nursing care of other patients on the ward.
Nancy, win for the day.
Hi, Mrs. Reynolds. How are you doing today?
Oh, wonderful.
Good.
Everything's better.
Mrs. Reynolds was certainly happier, but the doctors were becoming very concerned over her increased respiratory involvement.
Contact your
And so the days passed. It is 8 months since the Reynolds came down the hall to our ward. 8 months that has taught us all a great deal that we will never forget about nursing and what it means.
top of the ninth. The series may be riding on this pitch. Ford looks into Howard now for the signal. He's got it into the stretch. The windup. And that pitch is in there. He's out. The game is over.
Mrs. Reynolds?
Talking about that at home.